Hello, beloveds. Welcome to the Amanda Collins podcast. It's my honor to help you awaken to joy, be your greatest self, and live a life you love. I'm Amanda Collins. Each week, I'll share tips, practices, and rituals to help you feel the storehouse of joy inside. I'll answer your questions and talk with thought leaders from around the world about health, wealth, love, conscious living, and parenting. Are you ready to live your most fulfilled life? Welcome to episode 25. In this episode, you'll learn the principles of a conscious leader and how to incorporate them into any work environment and everyday life. How to be aware and see when the universe is opening doors and have the courage to walk through those doors. How to bring spirituality into any workspace. Spirituality is not just something you experience when meditating or practicing yoga. If you live from a place of mindfulness and presence, it can be with you every second of your day. Bring your intention and dreams into reality, and how to manifest your dream job or business. Jaime Rabin is Vice President of Client Services and Operations at the Chopra Center. She is an accomplished conscious leader and corporate alchemist. She's experienced at transforming culture and operations at forerunner organizations in the industries of health and wellness and integrative medical education. She is skilled with both people and spreadsheets, managing projects and developing staff. Jaime adheres to the tenets of servant leadership. Her management strategies involves the creation of family work environments where team camaraderie promotes higher efficiency and better performance. Prior to her executive leadership role at the Chopra Center, Jaime served as the campus director at Pacific College of Oriental Medicine, as well as previous roles as Dean of Students and faculty member. Dr. Rabin earned both her Doctor of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine and Master of Science in Traditional Oriental Medicine degrees from Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. Her doctoral capstone focused on the role of the psyche and emotions in Chinese medicine by employing a content analysis of readily available English language texts. Dr. Rabin is also received a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from the University of Maryland, graduating magna cum laude. Oh my goodness, I am so grateful, so honored, and so happy to introduce Jaime. Jaime has been a dear, dear sister of mine for, I feel like getting close to a decade. And she truly is a creative goddess, a love goddess, and she's a conscious leader. And I am so honored to have her here sharing her wisdom with us. So, Jaime, welcome.
Thank you, Amanda. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you. So Jaime is a conscious leader. We initially met at Pacific College Oriental Medicine when she called me to hire me to feng shui the building. And since then, over the last decade, Jaime is now working for the Chopra Center. So she is a conscious leader. So Jaime, I would love for you to tell us why these positions in these kind of more conscious businesses. Tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it just came about naturally for me. I mean, I really followed my passions. I didn't ever grow up thinking, one day I'm going to be a conscious leader. It's kind of something that organically unfolds when you find yourself in different positions, and then you show talents and abilities that maybe someone sees can be a great leader. And for me, I definitely did not, go into my career path with the knowledge that I would be in any executive position. I actually started out as an acupuncturist, studying acupuncture at Pacific College of Oriental Medicine. And what I found was if you keep listening to yourself, no matter if it seems crazy, you find your path unfolding as it should. So the interesting thing for me, and I know, Amanda, you know this, is that, I had thought I would be a practitioner. And then I kind of got pulled into the administrative work. And surprising to myself is that I felt really alive, and I felt that actually was my calling. So I had this kind of personal crisis of, wow, I always thought I'd be this practitioner, but this, more of this administrative, in that time it was educational administration. This is actually making my heart sing. Who would have thought that would be the case? And so, it does take a bit to be a conscious leader or a conscious person in general. It's really about self-awareness and knowing yourself and listening to yourself, even when it's uncomfortable.
Mm. I love that. I love that. It's like listening to that guidance and really, really trusting in that. And then from that place of really being connected, following that guidance, I like to call it like following the golden thread. So explain to us how you went from, doing administrative work to now, being the vice president at Chopra Center.
Yeah, well, so when I was at Pacific College, and when I was pulled into the administrative work from being a practitioner, everything kind of just unfolded, and I made my way from, advising students to eventually being the campus director and running the San Diego campus. And I had been there for 10 years at Pacific College, and I definitely felt fulfilled. I definitely felt respected and like I had a career trajectory. But sometimes your soul, as it did when it took me from being a practitioner to administrator, has other plans for you. Mm. So at some point, I started feeling a need to move into something else, something that was even more in alignment with what I was passionate about at the time, which was practicing spirituality and consciousness. And, it's very interesting when you are in a role at a place like an acupuncture college and you think to yourself, I need to go to a place that's even more conscious, and that there's not that many places out there. You can easily go into more of a scarcity mentality. Oh, my soul's telling me to go in this direction, but what possibly could it be taking me to? Because I'm probably in the top, 2% of, alternative thought organizations. But you listen, if you can, you listen. And a series of magical and synchronistic events led me to a meeting with the COO of the Chopra Center. And, at that point in time, it was, they needed someone in a leadership position that happened to have the strengths that I was holding at the time. And I mean, that's what synchronicity is all about, right?
I love that. And so as you've shared already, it's kind of like being connected, listening to guidance, following that, trusting. So what is like that place between listening to guidance and trusting? I think internally and then externally. So like internally with your thoughts and, whether it's meditation or what it can be. And then on external, like whether it's vision boards or affirmations or, any, like what are some of the tools? Because you shared that you're like, okay, I want to shift here to go even more in a place that's even more conscious, but where I am is really already. So, and you said it like created this, maybe a scarcity mentality. How did you shift that?
Oh, yeah. So, I have a pretty strong meditative practice. And so for me, whenever I can get quiet and really connect to my inner guidance, that really can help shift it from a scarcity mentality to a abundance mentality. But, tangible steps that I took was getting really clear on what environment I wanted, or not even I wanted, but that I felt I was being called to be into or to go into. So I got really clear on what that would look like. And then there is, and it's interesting that you put it internal versus external, because I do think there comes a point where it can't just all be in your head, right? So you have to express it in some way, and then you also have to take action on it. So basically I, had this internal knowingness and these internal thoughts of moving on to something different, having somewhat of an idea of what that would be in a more, a mission-based organization that was very much focused on personal transformation. So I got pretty clear on that, and then the expression part comes in. And so at that point, I actually reached out to several of my friends that I knew that I could share this. It wasn't that it was a secret, but I wasn't shouting it from the hilltops, because I really did respect and appreciate my job that I was currently in. But to the people that I trusted, I went out and said, you guys are connected. This is what I've realized. This is kind of like my, my career transformation manifesto. And I sent them an email, and it included my career accomplishments and my resumes. And also, this is the kind of environment I'm looking for. Does anybody know anything? And so then you kind of put it out there.
Hey, I remember getting that email.
You did. You were one of the people I sent the email to. Exactly.
Yay.
Yeah. And so, one of the people that I sent the email had happened to have met Sarah Harvey, the chief operating officer of the Chopra Center, like 8 years earlier, and in just a very casual encounter, and had reached out to her and forwarded her my email. And she got back to both of us the very next day and said, maybe we should just have lunch. And it just started there. And I had no idea that, sending out that email, that expression of my internal knowingness would lead to a meeting that would then change my whole trajectory.
Oh my gosh, this is like so yummy, delicious, because it started off just with this seed of consciousness within you, and then you allowed it to you were watering it every day through your meditation and through your practices, and then it's like that seed started to sprout up and up. And then it was like when it started to feel stronger internally, you're like, okay, there's these trusted circle I'm going to send it out to. And so it's so beautiful, because I think so many, I don't know, like people spiritually think, okay, I'm just going to sit and meditate and this will manifest. But there's
Right.
that whole part of actions. You're like, okay, this is what feels really right. There's this sacred circle I'm going to send this email out to. And then it was just like the universe goes, okay, you got clear, you're totally in alignment here, you sat with this, and okay, this is how then the universe kind of lines up the magic, like that golden web, and there was your position. That's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the universe will help you by opening doors, but you're the one that has to walk through the door. So the universe helped set up this meeting between me and Sarah Harvey, but I had to get myself to the meeting. I had to share from my heart what I could offer the Chopra Center. So it's you have to recognize when the doors open, and then you have to have the courage to walk through them.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And I have known and love and adored you, and we've worked together. Like we did an incredible soulmate manifesto show a couple of years back, and and I'm so grateful to be here with you today. And I just love who you are, because you always, it's from your heart, from your soul, clarity, and you're just so full of integrity. And so do you have certain principles as a conscious leader that you like to live by?
Yes, there's a few tenets that I would say that I live by as a conscious leader. And I think for anyone that's listening, I think the important thing to recognize is that you don't actually have to be in an executive position to live as a conscious leader. You can incorporate these principles into your everyday life. or into any work environment too, or any relationship that you're having with people. So the first thing is that I ascribe to servant leadership. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, Amanda.
No, please enlighten us.
So it's this basically in the simplest form. It's a leadership principle where you see yourself as a leader who's serving all of the people that you're working with. So you're kind of given the privilege of being in this leadership role where you can direct the way that the business goes, or give direction. And so in being privileged in that particular role, you serve the people around you. So
I love that.
whether that's serving them by communicating, the direction that you're going, whether that's serving them by really getting down and dirty and not being afraid to do every single task in the organization because that's what's needed at the moment. It's just really coming from, you're not in just this position of authority, you're really the servant, because you've been given this really sacred privilege of leading people.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
So that's the first thing that's kind of like overarching. And then I shared earlier that I have a very strong meditative practice. And I think to be a conscious leader, it is important to be able to be present in order to have presence. So in order to have presence as a leader, you have to be mindful of the moment and kind of be the calm in the storm, but also be able to be kind of like a force of nature when necessary. And in order to do that, whatever practice calls to you, it's just important to have that kind of mindfulness practice. So for me, it's meditating at least once a day, but I try to twice a day. So I don't know, Amanda, do you have practices that you do?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have, I kind of call them my non-negotiable spiritual practices. And the thing is I don't think like just because you meditate, that's your spiritual practice. To me, everything can be spiritual, to like how we eat our food, like just showering and feeling the water on us. A huge one, obviously, for me is meditation, but getting out in nature, forests, mountains, whatever that looks like. And just sometimes it's even just like, if you find yourself rushing and hurrying, like to kind of earth and ground yourself and just be like, okay, I'm going to feel my foot go down in the earth and notice how that feels in my body to put my foot down in the earth. And then the next step that I like to go to is, how does that feel for the earth right now for me to put my foot down on her? So I feel
look at
like
you, you're such a servant. You're such a servant leader. You're even asking the earth how you can serve it. So that's beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the thing. I mean, I even say this in feng shui trainings or whatever we're doing, like, okay, what's the number one reason you want to do this? Like, and really, it's gotta be like your hand's gotta be up saying, it's because I want to transform people's lives. I want to help people, because there's no other reason to do it other than that. Like, yes, I love it. I enjoy it, all those things. And of course, it's so vital to enjoy it, to be in your joy, because that's what we need in the world. And at the same time, like, service is what comes first. So I feel like I am in service a lot of the day, like whether it's feeding my children, playing with them. I mean, that's my joy too, but it's my service. Whether it's preparing a meal, for all of us is service. Like my intention for us being here together is of service to bring people back home, whether they're in a 9-to-5 job, whether they've got their own business, like whatever that looks like, to be in their joy, to feel grounded. So if we're in a point of service in what we offer in the world, one thing that's so important is like filling up our own cup. And I talk about this all the time, like, because we know we can't give from an empty well. Like, there's a reason when you're on the airplane that they say put on your own mask first, because we can't help anybody unless we've done that. So I would say my other huge practice is self-care. And here's the truth: I'm always having to remind myself of that. Always. I feel like it's almost a daily, a weekly practice. Like, okay, yeah, like I have my non-negotiables, but then when you notice, like you just like so there's a really nice balance when you're being of service and have such joy of being in service, and at the same time, okay, have I filled up my own well? Is my light shining bright? So I think we're also really accountable of keeping our vibration high, whatever that looks like: meditation, being outside, salt baths, um, journaling, whatever like feeds your soul. Would you
Yeah,
agree?
absolutely. And I think that's interesting. That's why, when I communicate the principles of conscious leadership, it's interesting that I always start with service, be a servant leader. And then the second one is, be present to have presence. But that be present really is self-care in whatever form somebody um, chooses to express it, or
Mm,
to embrace it. So you're right. I mean, it could be running for one person, it can be um, dancing for another. But if you aren't present, and you don't have the presence, then you can't serve. You can't really be a servant leader because you don't have that abundance of energy to be able to lead the way.
I love that, and it kind of brings me back to really all of this, we have to be in this place of self-love, and it brings me back to when we did our manifesting your soulmate class, because it all stems back to there. If you're not loving yourself, you're not going to take care of yourself, and if you're not feeling grounded and centered and present, well, how can you serve anybody else? So it all comes back to, have you done your work? Have you kind of done your forgiveness work? Have you released the old stories and allowing yourself to be like fully present in this moment?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Love it.
So then the next few principles are really bringing in kind of more of the awareness practices that you develop the more you get into, spiritual teachings, I would say. So the next principle is to be grateful for every challenge. So I think that that's one that comes with time and experience. But the earlier you can recognize that every challenge that comes your way is an opportunity for growth, the more you'll embrace the fact that there's always ups and downs. And especially in a leadership role or in an organization, or, you know, um, any big project you're doing,
Mm,
there's always these ups and downs. But when there's downs or when there's challenges, they're beautiful gifts to embrace, because there's a lot of learning that happens in the contrast. You are able to recognize what you don't want, so then you can bring yourself, your company, your organization in the direction of what you do want. And I truly believe, and I guess that comes from, that presence, that there is a spiritual solution for every problem.
mm, absolutely. Mm. I know. I so love that you're saying this, and it's like, it's like that's just our gurus. It's just our wisdom, and um, I love the principles of the Tao, and it's very much like, kind of maintaining that like middle ground. So not the highs and the lows and the highs and the lows, just like, this is what it is now. I'll be present with it. Let's see how we can grow and expand, or, shift things a little bit, and just kind of like be present and not let yourself kind of have this roller coaster. Because at the end of the day, I love this, like 20% is what happens and 80% is how we are with that 20%, rather than saying how we react to it, but just how we experience that 20%.
Yeah, because what you're speaking of is being the observer, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about not riding the roller coaster, but watching the roller coaster as it goes up and down.
Mm. Hmm.
And you can really take your best action when you're not on the ride and feeling the emotions of up and down on the roller coaster.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah.
And then also acknowledging that when you do feel that, though, because I mean, certainly it doesn't matter how long you're you're practicing. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We have emotions that are often they often feel constricted, right? I mean, the more we practice being observer, the less we really feel the ups and downs of those emotions. But of course, it's very common to feel that constriction. When we can recognize that constriction or that contrast is teaching us something, then we're able to, I think, detach from it a little bit more, or at least be grateful for it as we move through it.
I feel like I've taken a big deep inhale and exhale just listening to you here.
Yeah, I mean, just to give an example from what I shared earlier with my own journey, when I realized that I wasn't supposed to continue at Pacific College as much as I loved it there and the people I was with, it was kind of a difficult thing for me to accept, because there was a contrast between where I was at and where I knew or I felt that I was supposed to be going. And I think when you have that momentary even misalignment, it doesn't always feel very good. So it was imperative at that time, and believe me, I worked through it. It wasn't like I was just like, oh, this is an opportunity, right away. But when I was able to step away enough and observe enough to realize that this is an opportunity, that I was able to ask myself, okay, well, what is this teaching me? And that is where I was able to go inward more and figure out where I wanted to go, and then walk through the door that the universe opened. But without that first contrast, right, I wouldn't have ended up where I am now.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. And that's where the trust and the connection comes in. And I would say, like, there's little bits of it all sprinkled throughout our day. And for me, when I notice, it could even be opening up, an interview or, a webinar, and you're having technical difficulty, whatever it may be, I just like, okay, so say you're eager, your appointment starts at 9 or whatever, and it's 9:05 and the internet's not working. What I love to do, rather than, allowing myself, okay, you're allowed to feel your feelings, that's vital. But some of the practice that I do is I just like stop, ground my energy, like send that cord down to the earth. I take a big deep inhale and exhale. And then sometimes I just imagine this like waterfall, this energetic waterfall just flowing down over me and just cleansing my energy field, just like, it's like purification. And it's amazing how if you just stop and be present, then it's like you open your eyes and it's all working, or sometimes, like, if you notice yourself like really, moving into the story, sometimes what I do is I just stop, take a breath, I meditate, and then I just imagine, whatever bird you love, the eagle, the hawk, whatever it may be, like just soaring above, and you get to look down on here she is, going about her day, and just like have this higher self perspective of what's going on in that moment.
I love the image of the waterfall or the bird, but I particularly like that image of the waterfall. I think I'll have to use that. I do think that breath is so powerful. We breathe every day. We breathe throughout the day. We breathe in every moment. But when we can consciously be aware of our breath and just take a few extra deep belly breaths, it really completely shifts the energy. It's amazing. And I feel like it is just such an underused resource.
The breath.
Yeah, breath work, right? It's available to everyone. We all, doesn't matter, socioeconomic, nothing. Like, everybody has the ability to breathe. Yet it's something that I don't know if it's that people haven't been trained or whatever, but not everybody uses it in those moments when they're feeling that contrast, and it is so unbelievably powerful.
And it could be that it's just that simple. Like, it's the first thing we do when we come into the world, the last thing we do before we leave it. And it's like, in order to calm ourselves, down in that moment, release stress, all we got to do is inhale and exhale. But, on some level, it's like people are searching for, there's got to be the new thing, the more complex thing, like sign up for this, sign up for that. And it's like, no, you could probably just inhale and exhale. And, I also feel that the universe constantly is constantly speaking to us if we're willing to listen, like you so beautifully shared. This morning I was at my run. I'm going up through the forest with the dog, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Arf, arf." He's just like, and I looked aside, and there was like 5 deer, like this
Oh,
amazing stag with this big white chest, and they just stood there, and like we gazed into each other's eyes. And I love to do the work of the totem, and it's like I know what the deer means. It's like self-compassion and self-love. So I just like stopped, took a breath, and I'm like, okay, here's a beautiful, just a beautiful sight. I'm just going to take this in. And then also, like, what is the spiritual significance in this moment? And where can I bring more compassion in my own life, in a relationship right now, or in the world? And I feel like the more that we can just stop, breathe, and listen, it's like we just get guided every step of the way.
so I had started my day, feeling really in the flow. I was sitting in a meeting room, just feeling like, anything that was necessary for my awareness was going to come into my path that day. And then just somebody, very simply, a coworker, saw that I was getting up to leave and opened the door for me.
Mm.
And I know that that seems very simple, but he was, he got up out of his way. He wasn't leaving as well to open the door for me. And what it seemed like to me was just the universe saying, the doors will always open when you need them to open.
Oh my
So
gosh, that's powerful.
whether it's yeah, whether it's a deer, you know, or it's a door, as simple as that, the universe is always speaking to us. And like we've said before, it's just about recognizing those things or seeing the world through that perspective. And I think that's, bringing it back to conscious leadership or just consciousness in our day-to-day life is really that recognition, that awareness that we can see those signs.
Mm, mhm. And being willing to kind of trust in those signs, um and it's like surrender, it's like we surrender and then we get to surrender some more. And it's almost like surrendering, that thinking that we've got control of everything, and just allowing ourselves a nice balance between being beautifully, like divinely guided, and at the same time, like taking action where it's needed.
Yeah, and that's funny because this is just a moment right now that I'm having with you of just how things unfold as they should, because one of the other principles I wanted to share was about um, how as a conscious leader you be the change whenever you can, but you accept what you can't necessarily fix.
Mm.
So it's kind of that balance between acceptance and change, like you're saying, that surrender but also taking action. It's kind of like that that serenity prayer. I mean, I'm sure you're probably aware of it. The God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change,
Hmm.
the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah, I
I mean,
just got
that's
chills.
big.
I just got chills.
I mean, that's basically what we're talking about, right? So, I mean, and we're finding as we're talking and I'm sharing these tenets that I live by for conscious leadership, how they're just part of a spiritual existence. They're not like groundbreaking principles. They just kind of, um, you know, they're like a compass for me. They just help
Mhm.
me navigate my way, because I think it's not spoken about in the workplace.
Yeah, yeah.
We can talk about it in meditation and relationships. Even more and more we're able to talk about consciousness, but consciousness in a corporation or consciousness in the workplace is not necessarily something that's spoken of all that often.
Yeah, yeah. And I have something that I'd love to ask you about. So we're talking about, okay, aligning with your purpose in your work, your service, your dharma. But let's look at like somebody who's in a 9 to 5 job, and they don't love their job, or they don't necessarily feel that they're being of service, but we know they are. Like whatever job you're working, like you get to be the light, right? You get to bring that energy in and create the sacred space or create sacred in everyday living. But let's just say somebody's feeling like, well, I don't get to, do this conscious, work. I just sit there and I come into my desk, or, like how do you think that what are some main tips that you would invite people to really embrace spirituality in their workplace, no matter what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in every moment. And I know that it's easy for me to talk about conscious leadership or the principles of conscious leadership while working at the Chopra Center. Of course, that I understand that. But even when I've had, challenging days at work, and it happens to all of us, the thing that we remember is if our true purpose or mission is to practice consciousness, or connect to consciousness or be aware that we are the consciousness, then we have the opportunity to do that in every moment, in everything that we do, whether it's making a spreadsheet, whether it's cleaning the carpets, whether it's realigning a circuitry in somebody's office, whatever it may be. In that moment, you can be conscious because that's who we are as beings. And so if that's the purpose, if the purpose is true consciousness, then we have the opportunity in every moment, regardless what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And you can feel that connection. However, if you're called to do something else than what you're doing currently, then you practice, gaining clarity on what the contrast of what you're doing now is, what clarity you're gaining from having the contrast now, while still maintaining gratitude for the current moment. Because I think the thing I found the most when people feel like disempowered in a job is that they forget that it's a choice. In every moment, it's a choice. Now, the choice may be, I need to feed my family. And so this job is offering me the beautiful opportunity to do that. But I'm choosing it because the alternative is not one that I want. So I'm choosing to be here right now until there may be another opportunity.
I love that conscious choice.
Right. And I think
equals empowerment,
Exactly. Because you can say, well, I don't have a choice because, I have bills to pay and I have, mouths to feed and I have, and those are very real circumstances in the human existence. However, the power comes from knowing I'm choosing to be here so that I can pay my bills, feed my children. And so then how do I be conscious in what I'm doing now while still, if I'm feeling pulled to something else, still exploring that.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your just immense deep wisdom with us. I would love to ask you, and I know you share that you have a daily meditation practice and sometimes twice a day, but like what are almost like your non-negotiables, like 3 top that you like to live by just to maintain the balance in your life between relationships and work and life's demands? Like what are kind of your non-negotiables to really maintain that good balance and vibration?
Well, yeah, I mean, I said I have a meditation practice, but meditation means so many different things to different people, and I guess I'm just lumping it all in the meditation practice. But the truth is, the first non-negotiable for me is that I have like a ritualistic time in the morning. And that includes meditation, although the time that I meditate for may change based on what I'm doing. I know myself and I need a little bit of creative freedom to maybe journal, to read, a spiritual text, and to meditate. So whatever combination I'm doing in the morning is kind of guided. I need a little bit of that creativity. I can't be too routine in what I'm doing, but in order to maintain a routine, I have to have that be kind of the first thing I do in the morning after I wake up and use the restroom. Then I'll go sit in, a little corner I created for myself in the house, and kind of explore that. So that's kind of the first non-negotiable, is that if I give myself that time. So everything else I'll kind of work around that, whether it's, walking the dog or getting ready for work, or, because you have to balance all of that. The second non-negotiable for me is sleep. I have to I'm one of those people that need to get a lot of sleep. And so that will be turning things off and reading, by 9 p.m. And I know there's many people out there that, probably may or may not need as much sleep, but for me, that's I feel that that's where our soul really rests. Mm. And I do feel that I'm able to accomplish much more in the work environment and maintain balance if I start the day feeling well rested and then go into the meditation practice. So those two things are the non-negotiables for sure. And then, because I'm married and love my husband very much, I have to balance that. I want to balance that into my life. And so, just having even just moments of connection with my husband each day are, however small, are extremely important. So, one thing we do before and either of us leave the house in the morning, because we will leave at different times depending upon our work schedule that day. We always just have to, be mindful and say goodbye and give each other a kiss and, wish each other a good day. Processing and thinking about what my non-negotiables are and realizing that they're all kind of how I start the day.
Yeah. I start the day off to be a good day,
Yeah, I think it's like
foundational.
Someone once said to me, like, you win the morning, you win the day, and I really feel like the way you start your day is pretty, well, for me, because I recognize everybody have different practices, but for me, how I start my day really affects the whole flow of the rest of the day.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. It's just like, give us a peek in your life and tell us what it fills you up and that you gift your soul. And then when you kind of gift your soul, it's like creates that ripple effect. And I know I totally agree. I'm right there with you on sleep as well. It's like priority. And so one last question that I have is, you just give so much in who you are, and you're just so amazing, and I love you so much. What is a way that we can be in service to you in this moment? Like, how can we be of service to you?
Oh, wow, Amanda Collins. I'm just taken back by that question, because I really am always, how can I serve, with just a belief that things boomerang back the way that they should. So I really don't have something in the moment. And that's not because I don't have, a practice of self-care. I just feel really full. And I think what fulfills me really is that is coming from that place of service. So if there is a way that I can serve or support anybody that's listening, I would just say that just to keep the circle going, that I would be able to be a resource for somebody that may need advice on incorporating these principles into their life.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And I just so appreciate your honesty. You're like, no, nothing that I can necessarily think of. And I love that, because you're like, I'm coming from this full, abundant place, and, and feeling good. So thank you. I love you so much. Thank you for just sharing all of this wealth of wisdom and knowledge with us.
Thank you. Anytime I get to connect with you, it feels just like such a blessing in my life. And it just always seems to flow, and the time goes by so quickly. So really,
I feel the same way. And I'm like, see, now we got to get you over here so we can go to the forest and see the deers.
I know. I was just thinking, here you are in Ireland, and I'm thinking, wow, well, thank you, because I just got to spend all this time with you, and that really is just, it really is the biggest blessing for me. So I have the utmost gratitude for you having this podcast platform, just simply because it selfishly gave me some time to spend with you.
Oh my gosh, I love you. And I feel the exact same way. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Jaime. I love you. Bye-bye.
I love you.
This week, I'd love to know what you do to bring consciousness and sacredness into your workspace. Perhaps light a candle, say a prayer. Please share in the show notes section below. Do your best to share as much detail as you can, because thousands of incredible beloveds come here each week for support and guidance, and you sharing may be just what someone else needs to hear. Thanks, beloveds, for joining us today. Please come over to themandacons.com to continue the conversation and get access to all my podcasts, blogs, and videos. Did you enjoy this podcast? If so, please subscribe to the Amanda Cons podcast on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. Feel free to pass this podcast on to your friends. That helps us get incredible guests to share their secrets for an inspired and joyful life. If you want more great resources, come over to amandacons.com and join my mailing list for all my latest content. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, I'm sending love and joy your way.